Welcome to BL Stories, where romance, drama, and unforgettable boys' love come to life. Love knows no limits, and the best stories aren't always straight. Subscribe now and join our growing BL-loving family. Chapter 21. Trevor's POV. Alright, Coach barked, glancing around at all of us sitting in the locker room, waiting for whatever announcement he was about to make. You all know about the upcoming Philadelphia trip, right? Most of us muttered a yeah, though Brock just looked completely lost. Coach sighed and turned toward him. Brock, have you been living under a rock? I couldn't help but grin. That rhymed, I joked, rubbing my hair dry with a towel. A few of the guys laughed while Brock rolled his eyes. Coach smirked, shaking his head before lifting his clipboard. In a couple of weeks, we're heading to Philly. I've mentioned this a million times. Brock. David and Nathan started poking at Brock, who groaned in response. Anyway, just to make sure everyone's on the same page, I'll go through everything again. Wait, Mark raised his hand. Coach, is this trip going to be expensive? Coach paused, rubbing his chin before shrugging. Not really. It's nothing compared to our California trip in June. But I was getting to that, Mark. Be patient. Mark nodded, sitting back. What? We're going to California? David practically shouted, his eyes lighting up like it was Christmas morning. The whole locker room burst into laughter. Yes, David. In June. So, we've got a few months to go. This is awesome. David grinned from ear to ear, breaking into an impromptu dance in the middle of the locker room. Dave, sit down, Coach muttered, half amused, half exasperated. Anyway, Coach continued, shaking his head with a small smile. About the Philly trip, it's all set. I've already booked the buses and hotel. Hotel! David shouted again, fist pumping the air. Nathan and I exchanged looks before bursting out laughing. Dave's never experienced the luxury life, Nathan teased, patting him on the shoulder. Okay, are you all done interrupting me now? Coach asked, giving us his signature glare. We all nodded quickly. Coach began walking around, handing out small booklets. You'll need your parents' permission for the trip. This packet has all the details. Costs, what to bring, emergency info, health forms, all that stuff. I need them back by Monday. No later. I skimmed through mine before stuffing it in my bag. Coach gave me a knowing look and I just smirked. We'll be in Philly for 4 days, he went on. Leaving Friday morning and coming back Monday night. The tournament's on Saturday and Sunday, so stay focused. We're not playing against amateurs, these are serious teams. I rolled my eyes a little. Just because we're Canadian doesn't mean we're any less competitive. Now, the main thing I want to discuss, Coach said, glancing at his clipboard again, is room arrangements. I need 4 people per room. So, start deciding who you'll bunk with. The room immediately exploded with noise. Trevor! Justin yelled, pointing at me dramatically. David scoffed and lightly pushed him. Excuse me? Trevor's already taken, David said, grinning. Nathan raised an eyebrow in amusement. Nate and Trevor, room with us. Greg called out, pointing at himself and Tyson, who was already laughing. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that everyone wants to bunk with Nathan and me. We're kind of a duo around here. Sorry, Nathan said with a smile. Trev and I usually room with Dave and Brock. Then maybe it's time for a change, Mikey teased, smirking. Does it really matter who they stay with? Owen asked from across the room, wiping sweat from his forehead. It's just for a few nights. Soon, everyone was laughing and playfully arguing over it. Guys, I finally said, crossing my arms. Can we act like grown-ups for 2 minutes? The entire locker room went silent. Even Coach looked surprised. Wow, Mikey said, trying not to laugh. What? I asked, confused. Says you, Trevor. David shouted, and the whole room burst out laughing. Even Nathan couldn't hold it in. Fine, I said, shaking my head. Maybe Coach should just assign the rooms since everyone's too attached to me to think straight. Very funny, Justin called, still laughing. Coach smirked and nodded. Trevor's right. I'll make the room assignments. You'll find out in a few days. Please don't put me with Owen, Justin said dramatically. You'll stay with whoever I assign, Coach replied firmly. I laughed as Nathan casually slung his arm around my shoulder. I tried to play it cool, but I couldn't help smiling as I wrapped my arm around his waist in return and ruffled his hair. Wow, thanks, he muttered, trying to fix it while I laughed. All right, boys, Coach said finally. That's it for today. Go home and rest. You don't have to tell us twice, Nathan said as everyone began to pack up and head out. It was already 5:30. As we walked toward the parking lot, I leaned closer to Nathan and whispered, "Wanna come over?" He looked at me suspiciously. Why? Why not? I asked, raising a brow. His green eyes met mine for a moment before he sighed. Fine. If you insist. I do, I said, grinning. He shook his head, a faint blush creeping onto his cheeks. We got into his car, and as he started the engine he asked, "Wanna stop by McDonald's?" Always, I said instantly. He laughed. I don't even know why I ask, you're always hungry. Exactly. Never question food. Noted. He smirked as we drove off. The ride was quiet for a while, comfortable. Just the hum of the engine and the fading light outside. When we stopped at a red light, Nathan glanced at me and smiled softly. And in that small, wordless moment, I felt like maybe, just maybe, there was more between us than either of us was ready to admit. Can I ask you something? Nathan asked quietly. Sure, I replied. He hesitated before continuing. So, when did you realize you were, you know? I smiled faintly. That I was gay? Nathan nodded, trying not to look awkward. Well, I leaned back in the seat. I guess I just never liked girls. It wasn't some big moment or anything, it's just who I've always been. Yeah, Nathan murmured. Looking back, that actually makes sense. I always thought you were just being difficult. But really, I said with a small laugh. I'm gay. Nathan exhaled as if processing the truth. Wow. I can't believe I never noticed. I'm your best friend, I should have known. That was kind of the point, I teased, nudging his shoulder. He rolled his eyes but then looked at me again, softer this time. So, you actually love me? I felt my chest tighten, my cheeks getting warm. I nodded. Yeah, I do. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the car filled the silence. Then I finally said, Look, I know it's weird. It's not, Nathan interrupted. Okay, maybe a little, I admitted, smiling faintly. I get that you're probably confused, especially with everything going on between you and Tracy. But I don't want you to feel pressure just because I have feelings for you. No matter what, Nate, you've always been my best friend. And I'll always be here for you. That's all I wanted to say. He stared at me for a moment, conflicted, his green eyes searching mine. Then he gave a small nod, his cheeks tinged pink. How am I supposed to know what I feel? He asked softly. I honestly don't know what's going on in my head right now. I thought for a moment before saying, I guess it's about who makes you feel more like yourself. Who you care about most. It's not easy, but you'll figure it out. Nathan looked down, his voice quiet. I just need time, Trevor. I hope you understand. I raised my hands in surrender and grinned. Take all the time you need. I've waited this long, I can wait a little more. He looked up and met my eyes, a small smile forming on his lips. You know, Trevor, you're actually not such a bad guy. I raised a brow. You thought otherwise? He shrugged playfully. Maybe. The light ahead turned green, and Nathan turned his focus back to the road. I kept my gaze on him, watching the way the passing headlights brushed against his face. There was something in the air, something unspoken, but real. After a few seconds of silence, I leaned a little closer and whispered, You know, you're kind of cute when you're pretending not to overthink. Trevor, he said, shaking his head, trying not to laugh. What? I chuckled. Just saying. He glanced at me briefly before looking back at the road, his lips twitching in amusement. You're impossible. Yeah, I said softly. But you still keep me around. Nathan sighed, trying to hide the smile that tugged at his lips. You're ridiculous. Maybe, I said, still grinning, but admit it, You'd miss me if I wasn't." He laughed under his breath, and the sound filled the car with warmth. For the rest of the drive, we didn't say much, but the quiet between us wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was full of something new, something uncertain, but good. When the car finally stopped in front of McDonald's, Nathan turned to me and said, "So, still hungry?" "Always," I said with a grin. "You should know that by now." He laughed, shaking his head as he pulled into the drive-thru. "Yeah, I really should." "See? You're learning," I teased. Nathan shot me a playful glare, but he couldn't hide his smile. "You're impossible, Trevor." "Maybe," I said, looking out the window, my heart feeling strangely light. "But you love that about me." He didn't respond right away. But when I turned to look at him, I caught the faintest smile on his face, one that said more than words ever could. And that was enough for me. Chapter 22. Nathan's POV. Trevor bit into his second Big Mac like he hadn't eaten in days. Yeah, we were both starving by the time we got here, so we ordered way too much food. Honestly, if it weren't for football and working out, we'd probably be overweight by now. "Wow, you really love that burger," I joked, tossing a fry into my mouth. Trevor wiggled his eyebrows, finishing the last bite before swallowing. "Hey, I'm just hungry," he said with his mouth half full, staring out the window. "Yeah, but watching you eat like that is not exactly helping my appetite," I teased. "Oh yeah." Trevor grinned and opened his mouth wide, showing his half-chewed burger. "Ugh. Gross, dude." I made a face, shaking my head. He laughed, swallowing finally. "You're so dramatic. You're impossible. You love it," he said with a wink. "Maybe I should call Tracy and tell her what her boyfriend's been up to lately." "Don't you dare," I said, leaning forward across the table. Trevor burst out laughing, leaning back in his seat, his whole body shaking from laughter. If there's one thing about Trevor that always gets to me, it's his laugh. His dimples show, his brown eyes crinkle at the corners, and for a second, he looks younger, almost innocent. It's contagious. When Trevor laughs, it's impossible not to join in. "Haha, very funny," I said, trying not to smile. Like I don't already feel guilty enough. Trevor's laughter faded, replaced by a frown. "Hey, don't feel bad about yourself, Nate. I'm cheating on my girlfriend with you," I blurted out, instantly regretting how it sounded. Trevor's face fell and I sighed. "Sorry, I didn't mean it like that." He nodded slowly, looking down. "I know. I think." I smiled weakly. "You look cute when you frown like that." Trevor smirked. "Let me ask you something, Mr. Not Gay." "I'm not," I hissed, glancing around the nearly empty restaurant. "Uh-huh, sure," he said, lowering his voice. "That little moment in your car definitely proved how straight you are." I felt my cheeks heat up immediately. "You just don't know when to stop, do you?" He grinned, resting his chin in his palm. "You make it too easy." "Whatever." I took a sip of my drink, trying to focus on the straw instead of his eyes. Trevor leaned forward. "You're blushing." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." "Trevor," I warned. He chuckled, shaking his head. "Relax. I'm just kidding." But the air between us felt heavier now, too familiar, too close. I didn't know how to explain what was happening inside me. After everything that happened between us, I should have been sure of what I wanted. But I wasn't. I was caught between two people, my girlfriend, who I've loved for 3 years, and my best friend, who's somehow becoming more than that. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Without even looking, I knew who it was. "Hey, Tracy." "Hey, Tracy," she mimicked in a deeper voice, clearly annoyed. "Nate, what's going on? You've barely talked to me this week." I frowned. "We literally talked last night." "Yeah, on the phone." "Everyone talks on the phone, Nate. I mean in person. You're avoiding me, aren't you? Don't lie." I glanced at Trevor, who just shrugged. "I'm with Trevor right now." "Of course you are," she said flatly. "I miss you, Nate. It feels like forever since I've actually seen you." I sighed, guilt creeping in. "You're right. I'm sorry. Things have just been weird lately. Needed some guy time." She went quiet for a moment. I'm not trying to be clingy, you know that. I just feel alone lately. Can you come over later? We'll order pizza, watch a movie, whatever you want. I hesitated. Tracy was amazing, smart, kind, and patient. She didn't deserve to be treated like this. I knew I loved her, maybe not the same way as before, but still. Yeah, I said quietly. I'll come over. What time? Anytime's fine, she said softly, her voice warmer now. I'm really sorry. It's fine, she said with a small laugh. I'm probably just being emotional. See you later, okay? Yeah. Bye, Nate. I love you, I added quickly, ignoring how Trevor's expression shifted. Love you too, she said before hanging up. When I pocketed my phone, Trevor gave me a look. Dude, your life is like a soap opera. I sighed. Yeah, tell me about it. He smirked. You're basically the main character. Should I call you Bella Swan now? Fine, I said dryly. Then you're Edward. He raised a brow. Actually, I was going for Bruce Wayne. I blinked. Wrong movie, genius. He laughed, tossing a fry at me. Hey, sometimes it's better to mix up the plot. I couldn't help it, I laughed too. Even when everything was confusing and messy, somehow, Trevor made it feel just a little bit lighter. Chapter 23. Nathan's POV. When Tracy opened the door, she looked like what most people would call a mess. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes red and puffy, and her clothes looked like she hadn't bothered to change all day. But that wasn't what struck me. She had been crying. Trace? I asked softly, stepping inside as she moved aside to let me in. She sniffled and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, shaking her head as she caught me looking at her. I'm sorry, she said, her voice hoarse. I know you hate it when I cry. No, I cut her off gently, frowning as I pulled her close. Tracy, I've never said that. Talk to me. What happened? She buried her face into my shoulder, her body trembling as quiet sobs escaped her. I rubbed her back, feeling a knot form in my chest. I didn't tell you this on the phone, she whispered, still clinging to my shirt. But last night, her voice broke. She couldn't even finish before tears overtook her again. Tracy, I said softly, my worry growing. What happened? After a few seconds, she pulled back just enough to look at me, her fingers still gripping mine. Her eyes glistened with tears. You remember Ashley, right? I nodded slowly. Ashley was Tracy's cousin, more like her sister, really. They had grown up together, inseparable even as they got older. I'd met her a few times, and she was one of those people who just made you smile. Even while battling leukemia, she always had this light about her. Tracy took a shaky breath. She passed away, Nate. The words hit me like a brick. I froze, staring at her as if I didn't hear right. What? I whispered. She's gone, Tracy said, her voice cracking. They told her she was getting better. They said she had a long life ahead of her, that she didn't have to worry anymore. She was supposed to grow up, get married, live her life. She leaned against the wall, covering her face as her sobs grew louder. I felt completely helpless. Oh my God, was all I could manage to say. She was my best friend, Tracy cried. The only person who truly listened to me, who cared. You know. She looked up at me through teary eyes, her expression breaking my heart. I didn't know what to say. There was nothing I could say. Watching her like that, broken and lost, I knew one thing for sure. Whatever I had planned to do tonight, I couldn't. Not now. Tracy was already in pieces. I couldn't be the one to shatter her even more. Yes, I'd been dishonest with her, keeping things from her, being with Trevor, but ending things right now would destroy her completely. And no matter how confused I was, I didn't have the heart to do that to her. As I wrapped my arms around her again, holding her close, I realized something painful. A part of me didn't want to let her go. Even with all my confusion, I still cared for Tracy. Maybe not the same way I once did, but it was still love, different, quieter, but real. She needed me. I'm so sorry, Tracy, I whispered, kissing the top of her head. I'm really sorry. It's okay, she sniffled, gripping my shirt. You don't have to stay. I'll understand if you want to leave. I pulled back and looked her in the eyes. I'm staying. We'll do what you wanted, order pizza, watch a movie. Just be together for a while, okay? Her lips trembled into a small smile. Thank you, Nathan. I smiled weakly. You don't have to thank me. That's what boyfriends are for. And right then, I hated myself for meaning it. Tracy wiped her eyes again and smiled faintly. I love you, Nate. I really do. You're the best. I don't know what I'd do without you. Her voice softened on that last line, and something about the way she looked at me made my chest tighten. I don't know what I'd do without you either, I admitted quietly, brushing a strand of hair from her face before pressing a light kiss to her lips. Come on, let's set up Netflix. Trevor's POV. You love me, don't you? I muttered to the Oreo cookie in my hand. Silence. I sighed. Yeah, that's what I thought. I popped it into my mouth anyway. It wasn't answering my problems, but at least it wasn't judging me either. Bro? What are you doing? I nearly jumped out of my chair when Mark walked into the kitchen, staring at me like I'd lost my mind. Eating, I said quickly, my mouth full. Mark opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle, and gave me a concerned look. Have you heard about Tracy? I frowned. What about her? He opened the bottle and sighed. Her cousin passed away last night. Ashley, I think. I froze. Ashley? He nodded, taking a sip. I sat there in shock, hoping for even a second that he was wrong. But deep down, I knew he wasn't. I remembered Ashley, how full of life she was despite everything. It didn't seem fair. Not one bit. That's terrible, I said quietly. Yeah, Mark agreed. Tracy's really torn up about it. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the wall. Poor Tracy. She didn't deserve that kind of pain. But then, as much as I hated myself for thinking it, I realized what this meant. Nathan wasn't going to break up with her now, not after this. And that hurt more than I wanted to admit. Every time I think maybe Nathan's starting to feel the same way I do, life throws something like this in the way. He goes back to her because it's what's normal. Because that's what's expected. I ran a hand through my hair, letting out a frustrated breath. I liked Tracy, I really did. She was kind and strong. But I couldn't stand the thought of her with Nathan. Because deep down I knew. Nathan was the one I wanted. I groaned quietly and dropped my head onto the table. I was definitely going crazy. Chapter 24. Trevor's POV. Is Tracy okay? I asked Nate the moment he walked through the door. He froze for a second, looking a little lost before replying, yeah, she's okay now. I nodded, watching him take off his hoodie to reveal a black t-shirt. That's when I noticed faint marks on his neck, ones that made my chest tighten with something I didn't want to name. I turned away, heading into the kitchen before the silence could swallow us both. So, he started as I opened the fridge, what did you do today? I raised an eyebrow and gave him a look. Really, Nate? That's what you're asking right now. He just shrugged, pretending not to notice the irritation in my voice. I took out 2 cans of soda, slid one toward him, and leaned against the counter. Are you going to break up with her? I asked quietly. Nate's shoulders stiffened. He stared at the floor, his fingers tightening around the can. Trevor, honestly, I don't know what I want. Yeah, I muttered. I figured as much. He sighed. So how can I break up with Tracy? I don't even know if I want to. My heart sank. For a moment, I couldn't say anything. Then I laughed bitterly, trying to keep my voice steady. I get it, I said, though the words tasted like a lie. Trevor, are you serious right now? I cut him off, my frustration spilling over. Do you even realize how unfair you're being? He blinked at me in confusion. What are you talking about? You can't keep doing this. I snapped, slamming my hand on the counter. You act like I don't matter. Like I'm just someone you run to when things get complicated. But I'm not. I'm your best friend, and whether you like it or not, I've been in love with you for a long time. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Nate stared at me, completely stunned. My cheeks burned, but I couldn't take it back. I'm sorry, I muttered, running a hand through my hair. I didn't mean for it to come out like that. Trevor, he said softly. What? I asked, still on edge. Calm down, he said gently, though I could see his mind racing. Don't tell me to calm down, I said, stepping closer. You have no idea what it's like to feel this way and still have to pretend nothing's wrong. To watch you go back to her every time, while I stand here trying to convince myself I'm fine. Trevor. No, I interrupted, shaking my head. I can't keep being your second option. For a moment, neither of us said a word. The air felt heavy, charged with everything we hadn't said before. Then Nate frowned, his eyes searching mine. You think you're the only one who's confused here? You think I haven't been trying to figure this out too? I looked at him, surprised. He stepped closer. You think it's easy for me? Because it's not. You make everything complicated, Trevor. You always have. I almost laughed. And yet, you never stay away. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Because I don't want to. Something inside me broke then, like a floodgate I couldn't close. Before either of us could think, I grabbed his shirt and pulled him closer, slamming my lips onto his. The world around us disappeared, the walls, the tension, everything but the two of us. It wasn't gentle or planned. It was desperate. Message. For a second, Nate froze, but then he kissed me back. His hands found my face, pulling me closer like he'd been waiting for this too. I could feel his heartbeat racing against mine. It wasn't just about anger anymore. It was about everything we'd buried, every word we didn't say, every look that lasted too long. When we finally broke apart, breathing hard, I searched his eyes. Tell me that meant nothing, I whispered. Nate didn't answer. His silence said more than words ever could. I stepped back, my heart pounding. If you really loved her, I said quietly, you wouldn't have done that. He looked down, his expression unreadable. I gave a small, sad smile and turned away toward the kitchen. Pizza? I asked softly, trying to sound casual even as my chest ached. He nodded slowly. Sure. As I reached for the phone, I couldn't help but think how something so right could still feel so wrong. Chapter 25. Trevor's POV. I slumped into the leather booth, letting out a long sigh as I stared out the window. For some reason, I'd woken up way too early. School didn't start for another 3 hours, so I decided to stop by Second Cup for a coffee and a donut. The funny thing is, I've never actually gone out just to grab coffee and a donut before. And now, sitting here with a pink-sprinkled donut and a steaming cup of coffee, I couldn't help questioning all my life choices. I glanced around nervously, hoping no one from school would see me. Trevor Daly, football captain, sipping coffee and eating a pink donut. It didn't exactly fit my image. I took a bite anyway. Whoa. Look who we have here. That voice. I didn't even have to look up. My jaw tightened. Sure enough, Sarah slid into the seat across from me with a smirk that could outshine the morning sun. Sarah, I muttered. Hey, Trevor, she said cheerfully, leaning forward. Never seen you here before. You come often? Nah, I replied, shrugging. Just felt like a change. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup, letting the warmth calm me down. Sarah raised an eyebrow, her smirk deepening. Yeah, clearly. I frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Nothing at all, she said, but the mischievous glint in her eyes told me otherwise. And just like that, panic set in. Sarah knew. She had seen Nate and me that day. I cleared my throat, lowering my voice. Sarah, what are you doing? Nothing. Why? Look, I said, glancing around before leaning closer. About what you saw that one time. Oh, did I see something? She teased, pretending to think. I don't think I did. Or did I? Sarah, I hissed. Please. You did see something. You even said so. She chuckled, sitting back. Okay, fine. But I thought you wanted me to forget about it. I do, I said quickly. Yeah, I really do. Nate and I both do, because honestly, we don't even know what's going on ourselves. Sarah grinned. Well, whatever it was, it looked pretty intense. My face heated instantly. So, she whispered with a smirk, the popular captain of the football team, Trevor Daly, has a secret? I sighed. Yeah, well, life's full of surprises. Clearly, she said, still amused. So, you want to explain? I leaned forward. Sometimes, people aren't who everyone thinks they are. That's the truth. Sarah blinked, then nodded slowly. That's fair. And honestly, I added, I wouldn't be surprised if half the guys at our school liked more than one gender. It's not about being labeled, it's about who you connect with. She smirked. So, you're saying it's more about the person? Exactly. You never know who you might fall for, I said. One day you're just walking through the park, and someone completely unexpected changes everything. Like a redhead? She teased. I chuckled. Maybe. Redheads are great. She laughed softly. They fine. So, you like Nate, right? I hesitated before finally saying, I've cared about him since we were kids. Her smile softened. That's actually kind of sweet. Yeah, I muttered, rubbing the back of my neck. Sure. Sweet. And what about Nate? He seemed pretty into it from what I saw. I immediately felt my cheeks heat again. Nate doesn't know what he wants, Sarah. He's got a girlfriend, but still ends up tangled up in this with me. I don't even know what to think anymore. Sarah frowned. That's not fair to you. I thought Nate was better than that. Me too, I admitted quietly. But whatever. I shouldn't even be talking about it. Trevor, she said gently, I know we don't talk much, but if you ever need someone to listen, I'm here. And don't worry, I'm not going to tell anyone. I looked at her carefully. Promise. I promise, she said, placing a hand over her heart. I studied her for a moment. I wanted to believe her, but trust didn't come easy. Still, she seemed genuine. You're actually kind of nice, I said. Sarah laughed. Wow. Trevor Daly thinks I'm nice. I'll take that as a compliment. You should, I said with a grin. Then she leaned forward, eyes sparkling. You know what I think? What? I think Nate likes you too. Maybe he's confused. Maybe he's scared. But I see the way he looks at you. I froze. Don't say that. Don't put that idea in my head. I'm serious, she insisted. You can tell a lot by how someone looks at a person. Nate's eyes say a lot more than he thinks. I frowned. You sure you're not just reading too many Wattpad stories? She laughed. Maybe, but I trust my instincts. Her words echoed in my mind. And honestly, they scared me a little, because a part of me wanted to believe her. If you want, she said suddenly, I can help you. I blinked. Help me? How? Well, she said with a sly grin, if Nate's confused, maybe we can help him realize what he really wants. Sarah, I said suspiciously. Make him jealous, she finished. I stared at her. That's your plan. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book, she said. If he feels something, he'll show it. I sighed. I don't know. I've tried that before. Then try again, she said confidently. Sometimes people need a little push. I thought about it, then smirked. You'd actually help me? Sure, she said, though people might find it weird since we're from totally different circles. Maybe that's what makes it believable, I said. She grinned. All right then, deal. Sarah, you're actually pretty cool, I said with a smile. Wow, Trevor Daly just said I'm cool. I'm honored, she joked. You should be, I teased, checking my phone. 6 new messages, 2 from Dave, 4 from Nate, all asking where I was. I texted back quickly, just grabbing coffee. Be there soon. Then I looked at Sarah. I should go. Thanks for the talk. No problem, she said warmly. See you at school. When I got into my car, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My face was still flushed, probably from everything we talked about. As I started the engine and pulled out of the lot, I sighed. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I should just let Nate figure things out on his own. But then again, maybe he already knew. Either way, I had a feeling this wasn't over. Especially with that football trip coming up. And knowing my luck, I'd probably be rooming with Nate. I sighed again. Life would be so much easier, I muttered, if I could just stop falling for him. Chapter 26. Nathan's POV. All right, class, Mr. Robertson announced in his usual gruff tone. Complete the questions on pages 260 to 267. If you don't finish by the end of the period, it's homework. A wave of quiet groans filled the room as everyone pulled out their math textbooks. I stayed still, staring blankly at the front of the class. Mr. Dawson! The sharp call of my name pulled me out of my thoughts. I blinked, looking up at my teacher, who was giving me one of his infamous glares. Do you not have your textbook with you? The entire class turned to look. Great. No, sir, I said quickly. It's in my locker. Can I go get it? He folded his arms, unimpressed. Fine, but you've got 5 minutes. No more. Got it, Dawson? Got it, I said, standing up. As I walked toward the door, he muttered, I'm sure our star quarterback can handle that much responsibility. I didn't reply, but my jaw tightened. Mr. Robertson had a special talent for getting under my skin. He always made it sound like being popular was some sort of crime. Once in the hallway, I took a deep breath and relaxed a little. The halls were quiet, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly above me. My locker was on the 2nd floor, but honestly, I wasn't in any rush. Math was the least of my worries lately. Between football, my grades, and, well, Trevor, my head had been spinning nonstop. Maybe I just needed a few minutes to breathe. As I turned the corner, a hand suddenly grabbed my arm and spun me around. Before I could even react, a familiar face was right in front of mine. Trevor. Trevor! Before I could finish, he leaned forward, close enough that the world seemed to stop. I froze, my breath catching, my mind going completely blank. We stood there, so close I could hear his heartbeat, or maybe it was mine. The moment felt reckless, electric, and entirely wrong, yet somehow right. When Trevor finally stepped back, he was grinning like he just pulled off a prank. Skipping class, Dawson? He teased, his voice low and amused. I narrowed my eyes at him. Maybe. What's it to you daily? I thought you were too busy being the responsible one. He chuckled. Responsible? You must have me confused with someone else. I shook my head, trying not to smile. You're impossible, you know that? Trevor just smirked and leaned slightly closer. That's what makes me fun. I rolled my eyes, shoving him lightly in the shoulder. You really think you're better than me, huh? Better. He raised an eyebrow, that familiar spark in his eyes. I don't think. I know. Oh yeah. Yeah, he said with a grin, lowering his voice. At everything. I couldn't help but laugh. In your dreams. Guess I'll keep dreaming then, he replied smoothly, his eyes meeting mine for a heartbeat longer than they should have. The air between us shifted, light banter turning into something heavier, quieter. He took a small step closer, and I felt my pulse quicken. My back brushed against the lockers as I looked up at him. Trevor, I said quietly, someone could see us. He tilted his head, a half smile forming. Maybe that's what makes it exciting. I swallowed hard, trying to find words that didn't exist. You're unbelievable. He laughed softly. You keep saying that, but you never walk away. Before I could reply, a sudden voice broke through the silence. Guys? We both froze. I turned slowly to see someone standing at the end of the hall, staring right at us. My stomach dropped. Oh no. Chapter 27. Trevor's POV. Guys? Oh no. Have you ever been so scared that your entire body froze? Like every muscle just decided to shut down? Yeah. That was me right then. I jumped back from Nathan like he was contagious and turned wide-eyed towards Sarah, who stood there smirking like she just caught us in the biggest secret of our lives. You two should really be more careful, she teased, raising an eyebrow and glancing between me and Nate. Nathan groaned, leaning his head against the locker while I glared at her. Sarah, you scared me half to death. I hissed. Sarah burst out laughing. You should have seen your faces. Oh my gosh, that was priceless. Nathan rolled his eyes. Seriously? You could have been anyone else. Exactly, she said, crossing her arms. You're lucky it was me and not some random person. I was just heading to the restroom. Nate and I exchanged a quick look. I sighed. Okay, well, at least we're safe. For now. Are you sure? Sarah said, pointing toward the ceiling. When I followed her gesture, my stomach dropped. A camera. This school is full of security cameras, Sarah said in disbelief. Students might not notice them, but teachers definitely can. Great, I muttered, slamming my fist lightly against the locker. Just great. Nathan started laughing. I glared at him. What's so funny? You, he said between laughs, barely able to stand upright. Soon, Sarah joined in too. Do you realize what just happened? I said, throwing my hands in the air. We were caught on camera, and you're laughing? Nathan waved me off. Relax, bro. Maybe no one will even recognize us. Oh, right, I said sarcastically. Because it's not like everyone in this school knows who we are. Trevor, calm down, he said. If I'm not worried, you shouldn't be either. I groaned. Unbelievable. Sarah was still smirking. Wow, Trevor. You really care about what people think, huh? Sarah, I muttered, rubbing my temples. Please just go. She chuckled. Alright. I'll let you two lovebirds panic in peace. Nathan wrapped an arm around my shoulder, grinning. Trevor, chill out. Everyone, just be quiet for a second. I snapped. I'm trying to think. Of what? Nathan asked, clearly amused. I don't know. Just let me. Before I could finish, a deep voice echoed down the hall. What's going on here? We both froze. Coach stood behind us, arms crossed and clipboard in hand, looking like he'd just caught us plotting something suspicious. Hey coach, Nate said with a nervous smile. What are you three doing here? You're supposed to be in class. His eyes landed on Sarah, who suddenly looked nervous. Just going to the restroom, she blurted, then gave us a quick nod before disappearing down the hall. Coach turned his attention to us. Well, I was just walking around, I said casually. Gotta stay in shape for football, right, Coach? Coach rolled his eyes. Sure you were. He looked at Nate next. Nate fumbled for an answer. I was just getting my book from my locker. Coach raised a brow. Okay then. He gave us both a long stare before sighing. Don't forget, boys. Practice after school. Got it, we said almost in unison. Once Coach disappeared around the corner, the hallway went silent again. Then, before I could stop myself, I grabbed Nate by the collar and pressed him lightly against the locker. Can you be any more obvious? I whispered. Me? He shot back. You're the one who freaked out loud enough for the whole building to hear. Couldn't you wait until after school to make a scene? My jaw dropped. Unbelievable. You're blaming me now. Only because you're impossible, he said with a smirk. Careful, I warned playfully. Oh yeah? What are you gonna do? Fight me, I said, narrowing my eyes. He laughed. Right now. Right now. I leaned in close just to mess with him. You're ridiculous. Nate raised an eyebrow, then called out loudly, Hey everyone! Guess who's? I clamped my hand over his mouth and shoved him back against the locker. Don't even think about it, I hissed, though I couldn't help but laugh. He burst out laughing anyway, gasping for air. Trevor, you're insane. Maybe, I said, rubbing my head after he jokingly bumped it into the locker. But you love it. He grinned. You love me though. Literally. That made me pause. My heart did something weird, like skipping a beat. I forced a shrug. Nah, I'm over you now. Nathan blinked. Wait, what? I said, I'm over you. Found someone else. His expression fell. Seriously? Who? I grinned. Not telling. Before I could turn away, he grabbed my arm, firm but gentle, and looked me in the eyes. Then tell me this, he said quietly. What? Instead of answering, he leaned in and kissed me. For a moment, the world stopped. My thoughts, my nerves, everything just froze. Then, just like that, he pulled away. I stood there, speechless. Boys are confusing. I really wish feelings came with a manual. After practice, Nate, David, Brock, and I headed to Brock's place. It wasn't as big as the rest of ours, but honestly, I kind of preferred it that way. There was something comforting about small spaces, less room for chaos, more room for truth. Trevor's POV. You see, David and Brock have been our friends since elementary school. The four of us have been through just about everything together. The good, the bad, and the truly embarrassing. Back then Brock was, well, different. He used to struggle with his weight, really badly. It started to affect his health, and middle school wasn't exactly kind to him. People can be cruel when they see someone who doesn't fit their idea of normal. But even back then, Brock was one of the best people I knew, loyal, funny, and the type who'd always have your back. Eventually, he decided to turn things around. He started eating healthy, built a home gym, and worked out like his life depended on it. It took time, but he completely changed his lifestyle. Before we knew it, Brock went from hick to brick. But nobody dares mess with him. We were all hanging out in Brock's living room after practice. Him and Nate on the couch, me on a stool lifting some light weights, and David munching through a huge bag of chips. You know who suddenly got really attractive? David said through a mouthful of Doritos. Lena McDonald. Who's that? I asked, still curling the weights. David gave me a look. You know her, Trevor. She's in our biology class. Blonde, brown eyes, got rid of those huge glasses and got contacts now. I shrugged. Well, if I don't know who you're talking about, maybe she's not that unforgettable. Brock laughed while Nate tried to hide a smile. And besides, I added, glancing at Nate with a smirk, I've always preferred brunettes. Nate's face went slightly red and David rolled his eyes. You guys are way too picky when it comes to girls, David complained. Seriously, if you think about it, girls are girls. What's with all the overthinking? I ask myself that question every day, Nate said, smirking. Oh sure, David said sarcastically. Says the guy with a girlfriend who looks like she came out of a movie poster. He tossed a chip at Nate, who dodged it easily. Brock chuckled. Maybe you should ask Tracy to introduce Karen to me. I've always thought she was interesting. I don't know, David said thoughtfully. I kind of think Karen might not be into guys. Brock blinked. Wait, what? Why do you think that? I just have a feeling, David said, crunching another chip. My radar's never wrong. Your radar? I laughed. What, like some kind of superpower? Exactly, he said, trying to sound serious. I call it my DAR, my intuition. I can just tell sometimes. Nate chuckled. And what makes you so sure about Karen? Well, she's never dated anyone, David said, sitting up. And believe me, she's got plenty of guys trying. But she turns them all down. Every single one. Maybe she just doesn't want to date anyone right now, I pointed out. Or maybe she hasn't found the right person yet, Nate added. Or maybe, Brock said with a grin, she's waiting for me. David groaned. Okay, listen to this. Karen and Tracy are always together. Like wherever one goes, the other's right there. And in English class, Karen talks about her nonstop. I'm telling you, she's got feelings for her. They're best friends, Nate said calmly. That's normal. Sure, David replied. But Tracy doesn't talk about Karen that much. Not like that. The rest of us just exchanged looks. Leave it to David to come up with the wildest theories. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't wondered about Karen myself. Okay, but what was your point again? Brock asked, leaning back. David blinked. I forgot. We all burst out laughing. Sometimes, conversations with him just went in circles. All right, I'm getting some drinks, I said, setting down the weights. Grab me a soda, Brock called. Same here, David said. As I stood, Nate suddenly got up too. I'll come with you, he said casually. My heart skipped. You know, I think I can manage carrying 4 cans on my own, I teased as we walked into the kitchen. I know, Nate said, leaning against the counter. But I wanted to ask you something. I turned from the fridge, holding the sodas. Yeah? What's up? He looked straight at me, eyes steady and quiet. Wanna stay over tonight? I froze. Wait, really? He nodded, a small smile forming. Yeah. Please? I blinked, trying to play it cool even though my pulse was racing. Well, if you insist, I said with a smirk. Wouldn't want to make things awkward. Nate rolled his eyes but smiled anyway. You never change. I just don't want to end up on the couch, I joked. He stepped closer, his tone light but his expression serious. Who said you'd be sleeping on the couch? That made my breath catch. What's gotten into you? I said softly, half grinning, half curious. You're suddenly okay with sharing a bed with me? What about Tracy? His jaw tightened slightly. Don't worry about Tracy. I didn't know what to say to that. My mind was racing, and my face was probably as red as a stoplight. Whatever this new side of Nate was, quiet, bold, mysterious, I wasn't complaining. All right then, I said finally grinning. Guess I'll pack a bag. He just smiled and picked up 2 of the sodas, heading back to the others, leaving me standing there, completely dazed and maybe just a little too happy. Was Nathan finally opening up? Because if he was, I wasn't sure my heart was ready for it. Chapter 28. Nathan's POV. They say life is about discovering who you are, finally piecing together that complicated puzzle and understanding yourself. Some people spend their entire lives without finding those answers. But what are the answers, anyway? Who am I really? According to my birth certificate, I'm Nathan Michael Dawson, only child, quarterback of the football team, and an honor roll student. I thought I had it all figured out. Everything made sense. I had a great girlfriend, solid grades, and good friends. My parents were rarely home, but that didn't bother me. Life was fine. I was fine. Then suddenly, everything changed. I started feeling stressed at school. I began keeping secrets. And worst of all, I started questioning everything I thought I knew about myself. Because all of a sudden, I realized I was starting to like my best friend. And for the record, he's a guy. No, I don't mean just liking Trevor as a friend. I've been in conflict with myself for weeks, and now I can't deny it anymore. I think I might actually like him, really like him. I'm not ready to call it that yet. I thought I loved Tracy, but clearly I don't. Because when you love someone, you don't keep secrets from them. You don't hide parts of yourself. So why am I doing this? Why can't I just tell her the truth? Maybe because I'm afraid. Afraid she'll hate me. Afraid everyone else will too. But then again, do I even want to be with Trevor? Could I? Sure, I'm realizing my attraction to him, but can I really be in a relationship with a guy? Especially him? I groaned and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Trevor was downstairs grabbing snacks while I stood there, quietly falling apart inside. I'd asked him to stay the night, though I wasn't even sure why. Earlier today at Brock's, I kept catching myself staring at him when he wasn't looking. Something just shifted. And before I knew it, I'd blurted out the invitation. Now, I was nervous, more nervous than I'd ever been around him before. We'd had plenty of sleepovers, but this felt different. I knew why, even if I didn't want to admit it. Ever since Trevor told me how he felt about me, something in me woke up. I started noticing things I'd never noticed before. His smile, his eyes, the way he looked at me. And it terrified me. Great, I muttered to my reflection, splashing cold water on my face to calm down. This is just great. Then I heard him coming up the stairs. I quickly ran a hand through my hair, not even sure why I cared, and opened the door. Trevor stood there holding chips and a case of beer, grinning. Hope you don't mind, he said casually. I borrowed these from your dad's fridge. He won't care, I replied, closing the door. You planning to get drunk tonight? He laughed. Please, it's just beer. You know me. Oh, I knew him all right. Maybe too well. We sat on my bed with snacks between us. Trevor grabbed the controller and turned on Netflix. See? Told you getting this was the best idea ever. Yeah, I said with a small laugh. You were right. What do you want to watch? He asked, scrolling through the list. Feels like we've already seen everything. I don't know, man. You pick. Then his scrolling stopped. The LGBTQ+ section appeared on the screen. Oh, I said awkwardly. Trevor gave me that teasing smirk, the one that always meant trouble. Wanna? He asked. I blinked. You serious? Hey, he laughed. Call it research. But just don't let it show in the recently watched list. Relax, he said, grinning. You're the only one using this account anyway. Eventually, he picked a movie called House of Boys. When it ended, The silence was heavy. Well, I said, face warm, that was something. Trevor shrugged. I've seen more emotional ones. We sat quietly for a while until Trevor spoke again. You know, that main character reminded me of you. I frowned. What makes you say that? He kept telling everyone he was straight, until he realized he wasn't. Yeah, I muttered, and look how that turned out for him. We both burst out laughing, maybe because we didn't know what else to do. Our laughter faded into silence again. Trevor looked at me with that familiar spark in his eyes. Watch it, fairy, he teased. Oh, I'm so scared, I said sarcastically. He smirked, set the snacks aside, and suddenly moved closer. Don't act like you don't want me to, he said softly, half joking, half serious. My heart started racing. Okay, I whispered, not even sure what I meant. Then he kissed me. For a second, the world stopped. Everything, the confusion, the fear, the noise in my head, disappeared. I didn't think about right or wrong, about Tracy, or about labels. All I knew was that in that moment, it felt right. Then the sound of the front door opening snapped us back to reality. Trevor jumped back, eyes wide. Nate, a voice called from downstairs. It's me, Tracy. My heart nearly stopped. Chapter 29. Nathan's POV. Tracy's here. What is she doing here? Dude, Trevor said, his voice tense as he jumped off the bed, his eyes fixed on the door. I'm out of here. No, I said quickly, frowning. The last thing I wanted right now was to face my girlfriend alone, especially when I had a very obvious mark on my neck that she'd definitely notice. Trevor, don't go. He gave a short, dry laugh. This is your problem, man. Your mess, not mine. He glanced nervously at the door as we heard footsteps downstairs. Trace. I called, trying to sound calm. It wasn't unusual for her to walk into my house without warning. I really wished she could have waited another hour or two. Nate. Her voice echoed up the stairs, followed by the sound of her steps approaching. My heart began to pound as I pulled my shirt collar higher to cover the mark on my neck. Trevor leaned against the wall, arms crossed, a sly smirk playing on his lips. I'm going to enjoy this, he whispered. Not helping, I muttered just as the door opened. Tracy stood there, blinking in surprise when she saw both of us. Her hair was tied in a messy bun, and she was dressed in gray sweatpants and a pink sweater, no makeup, simple, but somehow beautiful. Hey guys, she said uncertainly. Babe, I didn't know Trevor was here. You could have texted or called first, I said, my tone sharper than I intended. She frowned a little, so I quickly softened my voice. But it's fine. I'm glad you came. Yeah, babe, Trevor muttered under his breath, smirking again. Tracy ignored him. So, what are you two up to? She asked, curious. I was just running errands and thought I'd stop by. Trevor and I exchanged a quick look. I kept my collar high, but Tracy noticed. Her brow furrowed. Nathan, what are you doing? She asked, eyeing my hand at my neck. I froze. Trevor, of course, found this hilarious and said nothing to help. I started completely blanking. Yeah, Nate, Trevor said with fake innocence. Why are you covering your neck? Something wrong? I glared at him. I'm going to strangle this guy later. No, it's nothing, I mumbled. Just bumped it or something. Tracy gasped softly. Babe, what happened? Let me see. She walked closer and I leaned away, panicking. Tracy, it's fine. Really? I said, trying to sound casual. It looks like you're in pain, she said with genuine concern. If only she knew the pain was more emotional than physical, guilt was heavy enough. It's just a bruise, I insisted. So why can't I see it? She asked, narrowing her eyes. Then she looked at Trevor. Trevor, why isn't he showing me? I honestly have no idea, Trevor said with exaggerated curiosity. Nate, don't be shy. Show your girlfriend what's on your neck. Oh, you mean the mark that's your fault? I blurted out. Trevor's smirk faded, and Tracy looked between us, confused. It was just an accident, I said quickly, locking eyes with Trevor. Don't worry, babe. Trevor's tone changed, flat, cold. Yeah, he said softly. My mistake. Before I could stop her, Tracy reached forward and pulled my hand away from my neck. Her eyes widened as she saw the mark. Nathan, she gasped, her voice rising. That's not a bruise. That's a... She stopped, her expression twisting into shock and hurt. What is going on here? Trevor sighed dramatically. Relax, Tracy. We were just messing around. She blinked. Messing around? Yeah, Trevor continued casually. We're best friends. Known each other way longer than you've known him. If I decide to prank him a little, that's between us. Nothing weird about it. Tracy looked uncertain. Right. Exactly, Trevor said quickly. Perfectly normal. Anyway, I should probably head home. He gave a half-hearted wave and walked toward the door. Bye, Trevor? Tracy said hesitantly. See you, I muttered, watching him leave. The door closed, and silence filled the room. Tracy sighed and sat beside me. Is he upset with me? I shook my head. No, he's just in one of his moods. Oh, she said softly. Then, after a pause, so what he said, is it true? I nodded slightly. Yeah. Are you mad? I don't think so, she admitted. It's just a little strange. I've never heard of friends giving each other marks for fun. She trailed off, frowning a bit. Unless they're, interested in each other. I forced a laugh. Well, then I guess we're both just weird. That made her smile. Nate. Yeah. She turned to face me, her expression gentle but serious. Do you love me? I opened my mouth, but before I could answer, my phone started buzzing. I glanced down, it was Trevor. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. Nate. His voice came through quietly from, that's the first and last time I'm saving you. You need to make up your mind, me or her. I can't keep pretending this doesn't matter. Think about what you really want, okay? Before I could respond, the line went dead. Tracy tilted her head. Who was that? Just my mom, I said quickly. Oh, okay. That was one of the things I admired about Tracy. She wasn't the type to push or pry. She trusted easily. She deserved honesty. She deserved better. As I looked at her, smiling softly at me, I felt the weight of everything I'd been hiding. She was amazing, kind, and loyal, the kind of girl anyone would be lucky to have. But deep down, I knew something had changed. And no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, I couldn't. Because the truth was, I didn't just have to choose between two people. I had to choose who I really was. Chapter 30. Trevor's POV. Thank you, Ice Cream, for always being there when no one else is. I'm pretty sure I've gained at least 6 pounds since all this emotional chaos started. If I'm not crying, I'm eating, which, to be fair, I'm doing right now. Ice cream straight from the tub, because apparently that's how I deal with heartbreak. Hey, little bro, Mark chuckled as he walked by, patting my back. Don't eat all my ice cream. Relax, I muttered through a mouthful of chocolate fudge. I'll save you a spoonful. He stopped in front of the fridge, giving me a puzzled look. You okay, man? You've been acting different lately. I sighed. I'm fine. Mark opened a bottle of soda and leaned against the counter. Trouble with school? A fight with Nate? Or, he smirked, girl problems? I froze, staring down at the melting ice cream. My brother had no idea. He didn't know anything. I'd wanted to tell him for so long, but the thought of how he might react terrified me. Trevor, he said again, his tone softening. You know you can tell me anything, right? It's always been that way. I looked at the floor. It's nothing, Mark. Really? Sure, doesn't look like nothing. He sat down across from me, studying my face. You've been upset for weeks. I stayed quiet, scrolling through my phone to avoid his gaze. Tracy had just tweeted about how happy she was to be with her babe again. 3 exclamation points. Meanwhile, Nate tweeted that he didn't know what was going on. Welcome to my life. Mark sighed. Whoever she is, you should move on, man. Girls are complicated, but you'll find someone who loves you back. That's how it works. I gave a bitter laugh. You're wrong, Mark. What do you mean? I swallowed hard, my hands trembling slightly. Then, before I could stop myself, I blurted it out. I'm gay. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Mark's eyes widened. Wait, what? I clenched my fists. You heard me. I'm gay. He blinked, stunned, then slowly leaned back in his chair. Since when? Since forever, I said quietly, my voice cracking. I just didn't say it out loud until now. He didn't speak for a moment. The silence felt heavy, but not hostile, just uncertain. Then, to my surprise, he gave a small, nervous laugh. Wow. Okay, that's unexpected. Guess I didn't see that coming. I frowned, wiping at my eyes. You think it's funny? No. He shook his head quickly. Not at all. I just didn't know. And it doesn't change anything, Trevor. You're still my brother. I looked down again, whispering, You want to know the worst part? What? I'm in love with someone who's breaking my heart. I laughed bitterly. Didn't even think I had a heart until now. But turns out I do. It's just in pieces. Mark's expression softened. Who is it? I hesitated, then sighed. It's Nate. His eyes widened again. Nathan Dawson? Your best friend? Who else? I said weakly. It's like one of those overly dramatic stories you'd find online, right? Except this time it's real. Mark didn't know what to say. Does he know? Yeah, I said, chuckling dryly. He knows. We've been close. But he's still with Tracy, and I have no idea what's going on in his head. Wow, Mark whispered. That's complicated. Tell me about it. I set down the spoon and rubbed my temples. Please don't tell Mom or Dad. I don't want anyone to know yet. Of course, Mark said gently. But Trevor, you don't have to hide forever. When you're ready, you'll know. I smiled faintly. Thanks. I guess I'll stay in Narnia for now. Mark laughed. My little brother is gay and in love with Nate. Honestly, I should have seen it coming. Please don't start, I groaned. He shrugged. Hey, I've always thought Nate seemed different. Maybe not in an obvious way, but there's something there. And if you ask me, he smirked, that guy's definitely not as straight as he thinks. My cheeks warmed, but I couldn't help smiling. Somehow, hearing that from Mark made me feel a little better. So, he said, grabbing his keys. When are you seeing him next? I checked my phone and blinked. Actually, right now. He's on his way. Mark gave me a teasing grin. Then I guess I should clear out before the drama begins. Yeah, probably a good idea, I said with a half smile. He started heading for the door, then paused when Nate walked in. Knock, knock, Mark said with a smirk. Ever heard of ringing the doorbell? This is my house, Mark, Nate replied, rolling his eyes. Mark chuckled and turned to me. Good luck, little brother. I shoved him playfully toward the door. Bye, go bother someone else. When he was gone, I turned back and found Nate already watching me. His eyes were steady, unreadable. What? I asked quietly, trying to hide how fast my heart was racing. He stepped closer. You didn't answer my call earlier. I was busy, I said softly. He took another step until I could feel the warmth of his presence. My back hit the wall, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt heavy, charged. Finally, I whispered, Are you going to break up with Tracy? Nate hesitated, his eyes dark with something I couldn't quite name. Then slowly he said, I don't know. And that was the truth neither of us wanted to hear. If I say I'm not sure, what are you going to do? Nate asked, his voice low and steady, eyes narrowing as he leaned closer. His breath brushed against my face, warm, minty, and teasing. I leaned in too, close enough for my words to reach his ear. Then I guess I'll have to prove to you that maybe you're not as straight as you think, I whispered, smirking when he stiffened slightly, not out of fear, but something else. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us thickened, and I could feel his hesitation, his curiosity, and something deeper he was trying to hide. Then, to my surprise, he swallowed hard and said quietly, As long as you mean it. I froze. I expected him to pull away, to laugh it off, to tell me I'd crossed a line. But he didn't. He just looked at me with an intensity that made my heart race. Was I dreaming? It sure felt like it. Trying to lighten the tension, I gave him a crooked grin. Don't do this if you're not ready, Nate. I'd rather it means something real, for both of us. He didn't answer with words. Instead, he grabbed the back of my neck and pulled me in for a kiss, sudden, rough, and desperate. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. My back hit the wall as our lips moved in sync, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. The noise, the doubt, the world. Just him and me. When we finally broke apart, breathless, Nate's cheeks were flushed, and he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. That was unexpected, he muttered, half smiling. I chuckled softly. You started it. He laughed, shaking his head. You're impossible. Maybe, I replied, leaning against the wall. But I think you like that about me. Nate looked down, his smile fading into something gentler. Maybe I do. There was a pause, long, heavy, filled with unspoken things. Then Nate said quietly, but you're right. I can't do this. Not while I'm still with Tracy. I nodded, understanding. Yeah, I know. That's why I stopped. He blinked in surprise. You stopped? Of course, I said, meeting his gaze. You're not ready for this, for us. And that's okay. You should figure out what you really want before we cross that line. Nate rubbed the back of his neck, a sheepish smile tugging at his lips. You're surprisingly responsible for someone who just kissed me against a wall. Hey, I have layers, I said with a grin, trying to break the tension. He chuckled, then looked down. I don't want to mess things up. I softened. Then don't. Take your time. I'll be here. He looked up at me, his expression warm, uncertain, but honest. You always say the right thing at the wrong time. Story of my life, I said quietly. Then Nate reached out, brushing his hand against my cheek before leaning in for one last kiss, slow, soft, and filled with everything we couldn't say out loud. And for that moment, it was enough. Thanks for listening to today's BL story. If it made your heart skip a beat, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Only here on BL Stories, where love knows no limits.